Hey, welcome guys. We're here with Sean, who won two pre-releases with Lexi, and he's going to show us his card pools here, what he used to get those W's, and, what makes Lexi so strong and sealed and limited. So bring us into it. Which one are we going to first?
Well, yeah. Thanks, Jacob. I want to say, first off, to the viewers, only 25% of you guys are subscribed. So if you guys could do us a huge favor, we're really growing the channel here. We want to keep bringing more quality content to you guys, testing, proven, winning strategies. So, yeah, definitely hit that subscribe button. And, yeah, as Jacob said, I was fortunate enough to be able to win two of the three pre-releases that I participated in. I participated in two of them as Lexi and one of them as Oldhim. The two I played Lexi, I ended up winning. I won at the Cloak and Blaster in Orlando, and I won at Goblin King Games in Ocala, Florida. So each of these, and what I think is great about the discussion we're going to have here is each of these builds is very, very different, and the way I went about winning was very different. But there were core play patterns that kind of connect. And I think that's something that I'm seeing a lot of people do, at least early. I mean, it's pre-release season, right? So not everybody's going to be an expert at the card pool. But strangely enough, and what I want to start with before we get into any of these lists is I think the strongest card in Lexi's deck is partially Shiver. Shiver's great. I do think Voltaire is a trap and sealed. I won't get into that, though, right now, at least. But I think the strongest card in Lexi's pool is actually Lexi herself. Lexi's ability is a once per turn action where she can flip her arsenal face up and gain an ability based on what type of card it was. So if it was a lightning card, it gains go again. And if it was an ice card, it's a frostbite token under your target hero. So it's a free frostbite. The way I think about it is it's a free frostbite token if you play your game right. And Frostbite is super impactful. I would say Lexi is probably the least impacted by Frostbite, at least a single Frostbite token, because she really only needs two resources in a fuse card to do something significant. And by that I mean fusing a Frazzle dominated, right? You can do that with one Frostbite, just a three pitch, and then go ahead and get that electric card you fused in Arsenal. Or, in my opinion, the best card, which actually I'm so surprised I didn't even have in this list, was a red Chilling Ice Vein. I can't believe I won this without a red Chilling Ice Vein. But Chilling Ice Vein, yellow, I did lean on that a little bit, which is when I fuse it, it hits, or deals damage rather, which is another topic that we're going to get into. The enemy hero is forced to discard a card. So essentially the goal of Lexi for me is less about fusing my arrows and more about making the most out of Lexi's ability and going from there, right? So can I start my turn by making a Frostbite and playing something detrimental like a Winter's Bite before attacking? So stripping a card out of my opponent's hand before they've even had the chance to see what damage I'm going to present, or getting something like a red Shock Striker or a red or I only had a yellow in this list, or a Heaven's Claw in Arsenal, flipping it face up, then being able to attack with it with go again, and behind that having an ice arrow, potentially fusing it. I mean, it was so easy for me to fuse my ice arrows, or something like that. That's really what I was looking to do here. And Mark of Lightning, I think Mark of Lightning is the best equipment in Aria Limited. If you're drafting and you don't want someone in your pod to be kicking butt on Briar or Lexi, and you're trying to move towards Oldhim, I think you're totally fine hate drafting a Mark of Lightning. But we're talking about sealed here, so I won't get into that. But Mark of Lightning, essentially, the attack deals 1 damage to defending hero if the opponent blocks from hand. And there are multiple effects that benefit from that. One of them is Ball Lightning. So if I use a Ball Lightning, whenever I deal damage, deals that much +1. So if I use Ball Lightning, I can create a separate source of damage that then multiplies to 2. The same is true of Frazzle. Frazzle has basically the same ability as Ball Lightning when it's fused. And also, what may not be obvious, because it's an elemental card that's fused with ice, is Chilling Ice Vein. Whenever an attack deals damage, that's when the discard effect comes into play. So you can use the mark right there on Chilling Ice Vein. So if you don't dominate a Chilling Ice Vein, or you had it saved from the turn before, you can still fire that Chilling Ice Vein and force the discard by popping Mark of Lightning if they block it. I wouldn't recommend doing it if you've guaranteed the hit, because they can just then choose to pitch for 2 resources and you've kind of wasted your Mark of Lightning. So you want to keep your eye out for that. And one more thing before I get into the individual cards here is that the Honing Hood, originally I thought it was required for Lexi sealed play, but as we'll find out with the second deck that I won with, I didn't have a Honing Hood. I just really didn't like my Briar Oldham pools. So I said, you know what, I'll go with my Comfort Pit Lexi. Let's try it. But Honing Hood is really great, and I don't even use it to load an arrow. I think you're making, because Shiver is at instant speed, I think you're using Honing Hood wrong if you're loading an arrow. I think what you want to be doing is you want to be loading in either an ice or a lightning card, depending on the situation, to help you get that Lexi bonus if your arsenal's empty, or if your arsenal is filled with something like an arrow, right? Sometimes you just have that extra arrow in hand. You didn't have to block. You fired everything you could and you still had something left. The Honing Hood says, all right, go ahead and arsenal it, get 4 more cards in your hand, and then play flexibly using that. Something that I did 3 times that was very special or very helpful with the Honing Hood was I actually played against 3 Briars who won the dice roll and went first. And what I did was I would break the Honing Hood on turn 1 to try to get an ice card into arsenal, so that I knew that when the Briar went into their next turn with an arsenal and 4 cards, I could give them that Frostbite and still attack them, right? So I could slow them down and I could see what I could do with my attacks. I was fortunate enough that my ice cards were really, really strong. My sealed pool had 2 red Chill to the Bones and 3 red Winter's Bites. That is unreal. And given that I was running a tight 31 cards, I was seeing these all the time. Like, I was seeing these every game at least once. Sometimes I would get a hand of them and I'd be like, okay, Winter's Bite, Arsenal, another Winter's Bite, take the turn off, right? And basically just keep my opponent from having a turn. I was very fortunate in that. So yeah, with that being said, that's kind of like the core of what I was doing. I was really playing around my elemental bonuses, and then looking to see how I could buff with my arrows. Let's see, I can zoom in here. I mean, Overflex is fantastic. I actually never use Overflex for a reload. I mainly use Overflex. Overflex for reload is good if you have enough resources and cards to be able to get that lightning or ice card into arsenal and to be able to play it with an arrow that turn. But typically that's really costly. So the way I like to play Overflex is I like to put it into arsenal. If I see it, if I don't really have a good hand, I put it into arsenal and I will wait to get an arrow and a blue pitch, and I will exclusively dominate that arrow and try to fuse that arrow. So frankly, there is nothing better than sending an Overflexed Chilling Ice Vein for 8 dominate and fusing it, forcing your opponent to discard a card. It is so good. That is something that really helped me win my games. I had one play where I Overflexed a Frazzle and then hit it with a Lightning Press on top of that, and my opponent had blocked, so I came in with the Mark of Lightning, and I think it was like 13 damage that went through off 1 arrow, which is kind of bonkers if you ask me. But yeah, and that's also the great part about Lexi, and is because of her easy access to dominate. And I noticed when I was like testing Briar, is I can say, yeah, here's a lightning press. I'm fusing the lightning press, and because it's dominated, they can't do anything about it, right? I think lightning press keeps. So the lightning press. I actually want to make a comment on that. I had a blue lightning press in my sealed pool, in the sealed pool. I did not run it. The reason I didn't run it is because that one extra damage was not worth the opportunity cost of not only having a zero block card, but on Lexi, you can't really afford to arsenal the lightning press because you have no way to get it out of arsenal unless you play an attack action that is cost 1 or less. And you're really not going to get that many. Realistically, you're only going to be seeing Shock Strikers and Heaven's Claws that don't require you to have an empty arsenal to play. So you have to be very careful with those. Yeah. So I guess the last thing I want to say about this is, or the last two things are, use your Invigorates very sparingly. I'm also not a huge fan of Invigorates on Lexi. I actually had a second yellow Invigorate that I took out, A, to cut the deck down, but B, just because I think that it can often be hard to fuse. I mean, realistically, I had Entwine Ice, right? So I have 6 cards that can be fused with Ice and a bunch of Ice cards, but your hand's going to get disrupted sometimes, and more often than not, I feel like Invigorate can be a dead card. It's a card that you block with, or it's a card that you inefficiently pitch with. So that,
I was going to ask is that did you find yourself blocking with it more often than actually using it?
yeah, more or less, yeah. And yeah, so the last thing, and I want to get into the one downfall of this deck. So I did lose a game on this deck. I was the only 5-0 in the tournament, and I went to round 6, and I played everybody's buddy, my buddy Bronson, and he is such a good Guardian player, and he was on Oldhim 5-1, and I ended up getting decked by him because I was running a tight 31 cards, and I believe he won the dice roll and went first. So I think I emptied my hand turn 1, and the consequences of doing that caused me to lose, like, and it had a bunch of my attacks in there. I think, I'm running outside of blues, right? I have a few blues attacks, yellows. I'm running 8 attacks outside of blues, right? I think that's what I'm counting here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I don't really count Dazzling Crescendo as like a strong attack. Not a fan of it. I think really. I see it as like a pitcher block card, not really a playable card. Yeah, I have 8 attacks, and I think I lost 2 or 3 of them hand 1. So, or 9, 9, 10 Winter's Grasp. But I lost a bunch of them. The blue icy encounters aren't really that helpful because they're block 2, attack for 4. It's not really going to influence the Oldhim that much. But yeah, so that's the one thing is like to run Lexi effectively, you want to really just like have a crisp, concise deck. I don't really think you want fluff, but you do run the risk of getting decked. So you have to be really efficient, and I think I should have been more willing to take damage when I had those attacks in hand and save them for later games, and then when I had those action hands, that's when I should have been more willing to block. It's tough because most of the attacks are the block 3s on Lexi, but I think that's something that maybe if I'm a little bit more aware of, I don't lose that last game. So... yeah, I think that's the last comment I have on this deck. Outside of, no, I think that's it.
I will just chime in. I did fall for the Voltaire trap during my pre-release, and it turned out I had a lot of instances of double go again, and it just was not synergizing, and also as you mentioned, reload can kind of be a trap because you don't get that dominate effect by loading with Shiver. So definitely something to consider. Just using that one just for its pump effect can be great, especially just with Bolt and Shot. I actually pulled Bolt and Shot both of my pre-releases that I played, and any pump effect with Bolt and Shot is just money. That's great.
Yeah, I would say
That's
Bolting
really
Shot is
interesting.
a little bit stronger than Dazzling Crescendo because it's easy to give like even
Yeah,
on
so
Shiver it's easy to give a +1 and you can get that reload effect. Um, and you're gonna there's
absolutely.
other ways to do that, but I think Dazzling Crescendo comment here is that sure it gets go again, but if you're on Shiver you can't load twice, so you need to have an attack action in hand, and typically if it's an attack action in hand, it's going to be one of those lightning or ice cards that you kind of want to be arsenaling. Because for me personally, there's nothing wrong with like arsenaling a Winter's Grasp, blocking with 3 from hand or 2 from hand, holding one of your other element cards, pitching a blue, and then swinging Winter's Grasp and giving them a Frostbite for free from Lexi. I think that's a plenty productive play. So yeah, Dazzling Crescendo, I'd say if you've got a bunch of them, I don't necessarily think that means you've got a good Lexi pool. I think you really want to be looking for. Personally, I think the best cards are going to be. I think Blizzard Bolt is number 3. Chilling Ice Vein is number 2. And Frazzle is number 1 just because of its ability to stack damage off of a Ball Lightning and a Mark of Lightning. So if you're seeing those in red and yellow, you've really got an opportunity to do well on Lexi.
Something noticing out of your lightning and ice pools is I'm not seeing a lot of electrifies or the polar blast, I think it's called. I ended up pulling a bunch of those in my sealed pools, and I loved them because they draw you a card back when played from Arsenal. Is that something that you just didn't run into them, or did you consciously choose not to play if you did pull them
I think
for some reason?
I think for this one, I had a blue Electrify, and I figured 1 was enough because I wanted to be getting attacks out, and I just didn't want to overcrowd the deck. I don't think I ran into any Polar Blasts here, but I do have Polar Blasts in the next list, which we'll definitely be able to cover there. Any other thoughts here, man?
That's a good transition.
Yeah, all right, cool.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good transition to the next one, which is totally different.
Sweet, we can just hop on over here. Yep, so this is the second one I played. Armor is, yeah, I think as far as generic armor goes, the deep blue, you can't really go wrong with the deep blue. I mean, if you have nothing else in the chest piece, I would have preferred Code of Frost on Lexi. Like, I think Code of Frost is just such a great way to take back tempo. Especially if you can have a dead turn. You can block 4. If you've got that ice card in Arsenal, especially on Briar, because I think what people underestimate is Briar can't give you Frostbite. So you can be much more resource tight on Briar, and you can afford to slow the game down. You don't have to race her every hand. But you do definitely have the ability to output the same amount of damage that is unblockable as Briar. And Deep Blue is really helpful. I think it saved me 2 of my 4 games where I was just a little bit resource starved, and it really helped me, take things home. Mark of Lightning again. I can't say enough about this card. Personally, I think Mark of Lightning is going to be played in constructed decks. I think Shock Charmers is great, but I think some combo decks that maybe need to guarantee that Mark of Lightning damage once per turn. I can totally see us seeing Mark of Lightning as a played in some matchups by either Briar or Lexi. And yeah, so
it's beautiful in cold foil.
Mark of Lightning, I haven't seen it. I haven't seen any
so
cold
good.
foils. Ah, man, dude, I've pulled.
Yeah.
I'm gonna tell the story here just to get on my soapbox. But between Monarch season and pre-release, skirmish season, and Aria pre-release, I've opened 63 packs of first edition and haven't opened a single cold foil in any of them. Yeah, it's been a tough journey. Yeah, it's been a tough journey, especially because in Aria, I think pull rates are up, but it's really cool because now the cold foil is in the lightning or in the equipment slot, right? So in theory, you can pull one of those majestic, like pulsive candle holds, like or Volthaven. Like you can pull one of those and an equipment in the same pack. In theory, I don't know if anybody's done it, but maybe they've got it set up so you can't.
But That would be amazing.
Yeah, they are in separate slots, so.
Yeah. Yeah. I did see several people pulling cold foil of those pulses, and they look really nice too.
Yeah, they're beautiful.
Definitely nice. And people were pulling those plus Majestics, like rainbow foils. Like, I think, I guess those wouldn't be in the same pack, but just in the same 6 packs, and I was so jealous.
Yeah, 100%. I saw somebody pull a I think it was Chris. Chris pulled us creepers and a pulse of candle hold in the same 6 packs. And I was like,
Oh,
it was funny. Yeah, it was funny because we had a running joke that I was just going to pull horribly and he was going to pull better, and we drove from one to the other, and he did pull really well, and I was like, yeah, that is how it goes. Anyways,
oh my gosh.
yeah, again, Shiver, not that I really had a choice, but we love this card. This deck, so the other deck was much more leaning towards ice, right? With, some strong lightning cards. I mean, Red Shock Striker, I think it's a dead card on Briar, because Briar has so many better options for attack actions. But for Lexi, because you can trigger ability and get that go again, it can't be understated. So I think Shock Striker is fantastic, and because it costs 1, you can pitch blue, play Shock Striker, load an arrow, shoot the arrow, and maybe even charge it off of 1 pitch. So I mean, yeah, it's hard to beat that. Some things to note here. I did get access to a Chilling Ice Vein Red. Like I said, never going to complain about that. And my lightning arrows are about the same. So I was big on lightning cards. I still only had 5 playable lightning arrows. I did have Snapshot, which I really I see this as being more of a constructed card. I never really saw 2 arrows when I was, able to shoot Snapshot, and frankly, Snapshot doesn't have go again. So even if I were to use it and fuse it, my hand's probably dead. I think the only way to give it go again is to... I don't have a Honing Hood, so I couldn't pull a lightning card. Yeah, Flash. I do have a Flash. I could do Flash, or I could do a Weave Lightning into it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, comments here. I was really, really reliant on the Overflex into lightning damage here. And then if I was seeing things like... I do have a Channel Lake Frigid. Believe it or not, I didn't play it a single time in 4 games. I either blocked with it or I pitched with it. I always had enough fuse cards. And that's what I when I was talking to Steven the other day on the channel, I think that for sealed and draft Aria, I think your best indicator of who to play is not the class cards that you have access to, but rather the individual element cards that you have access to. So, I mean, the Weave Ice might be my favorite card here. There are times when, I actually shot a Chilling Ice Vein for 9 because I was able to use Shiver for +1, and then fuse the Ice Vein to give it Dominate. And, 9 Dominate, Chilling Ice Vein, no one's thrilled about that one.
Yeah, that's spicy.
Yeah, it definitely is.
Yeah, that's so strong.
Yeah, it's so good. And then pairing that with Overflex, even just for the damage... I was just able to buff my arrows and go incredibly tall here. I was able to see that Weave Ice and my Overflex multiple times. In addition to Lightning Press and having access to 2 Ball Lightnings, that was kind of my game plan here, was saying, yeah, the arrow effects are important, but I have really strong actions, so let's just focus on going tall, and if I can fuse for the bonus... I'll do that, which fortunately enough I was able to do tons of, so much, because I have more element cards of each type than I do the arrow that I would fuse it with. And I had some strong attack actions that even if I had a no arrow hand, I could still throw out a Heaven's Claws for 4, or particularly good is Winter's Grasp for 6. 6 damage is above that psychological threshold of being okay, because it's now 2 full block 3s, and in sealed, there's so many block twos.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's
And like you said, most of the block threes are attacks. So if you are getting those block threes from their hand, that's probably a lot of the damage they could output. So.
yeah, exactly. And then also like a sleeper hit was kind of flake out, because I did have one game, which was actually in the other deck. Now that I think about it, I did have I had a red flake out, and I won a game by Exacxes because my opponent was at 3 health, and I played a flake out with +1 and was able to fuse it for the dominate and killed them at 3 health, and they could do nothing about it. So that paired with Mark of Lightning is also really good. So yeah, I think Lexi is a sleeper hit. I think if I don't really have much more to say on these decks other than I think if you use her pump cards effectively and really lean into the strength of her hero ability, you can control the pace of the game. Like there were games in the first one where if I got that ice card off of Honing Hood at the start, the game was over. Like it was just like at that point I was like, okay, I'll take damage. That's actually another key thing is I had games when I was willing to take 12 damage that with no frostbite because I didn't care about damage. I cared about being able to do what I wanted to do, knowing that what I wanted to do was to keep my opponent from ever being able to enjoy the game again. Like they could not do, like if I got what I wanted to do one time, then that meant that for the rest of the game I can control the pace, and still output enough damage. And at the 20 health threshold, like you get someone to 8, and if you've got easy access to dominate or just a lot of output, 8 is kill pressure, right? 8 or below, and that's what people are experiencing with Arya and Briar, right? Like people will be comfortable, they'll take her first 2 combos, they'll go to 6 or 7, and then they start to realize like not only did Briar have Exacxes on this turn and force me to block out, but I also took unblockable damage. So you start to go into the spiral of like never being able to come back. So that's what I wanted to do with this deck, and I think the way you do that is by timing Lexi's ability the right way and being willing to recognize that it is game-changing enough to create 1 Frostbite or to get go again, and then follow up with a dominated arrow that has a detrimental effect. I think that's very, very significant.
Very cool. And now I do have a question for you. How often did you find yourself using Lexi's ability? Was it every turn consistently? Because I felt like I did fall into the trap of I can go wide. Now I did have Voltaire, but I said I can go wide here. Just played out my final attack for the turn, which is usually an element card, and then ended up having nothing to arsenal, and so then I have no Lexi effect next turn. Would you say it's better save that attack, arsenal it, or how did you find that panning out?
Yeah, I tried to do it every turn if I could, unless I saw something like a yeah, I think just because of the pace of how Lexi plays, I never really had an option. Like after I gave my arrow attack, I never had an action point. But also I deliberately, when I was blocking, I would say, especially since the sealed pool, like so many people are leaning towards Briar because it's obvious unblockable damage. Briar, like I said before, you don't have to worry about those frostbites. So I would say, okay, I'll take 8 damage now. I've got an arsenal and a 4-card hand. I can play everything out and still hold that element card. And my goal was to activate Lexi every single turn. If I could activate Lexi every single turn, I knew I was winning the game. That's just how it went for me. And it didn't matter if it was ice or lightning. That I just played to the pace of what my deck was giving me.
That's great. I think that's a great tip for everybody, like in future, future instances. But that was my trap, I guess, falling into the Voltaire of just wanting to play out my whole hand and not arsenaling it. That looks great. So how are you feeling now with Lexi taking you so far, winning 2 pre-releases, you thinking moving into Classic Constructed too?
Yeah, I mean, I said I was gonna play. I said I was gonna play Lexi from the start.
Yeah.
Very cool. So I was pretty happy to see her doing well in limited. I think that it's all around a balanced limited set. I figured that out in my game, my run with Oldhim, I went 3-1, and I think I could have gone 4-0. I didn't read his ability, and I didn't realize that pitching Earth on one attack, it said prevent the next 2 damage this turn, so I resigned myself to death by Rosetta Thorn when I didn't have to, and I had a 7 damage swing back at the Briar, but that's a different story. I think it's super balanced, and I think as far as Lexi goes and constructed, I think there's so much to test. I think from what I've seen so far, she can be extremely oppressive, but I think that oppressive ice build will have some tough matchups, because in order to keep your opponent from doing what they want to do, you are still taking a little bit of damage. You're kind of, and you're reducing your own ability to output damage. So that is how control goes, right? And I think that there's about 100 different builds that you could come up with for Lex. You can go Voltaire, shoot twice. There are people doing like snapshot, like snapshots into dazzling crescendos, like all over the place. Like just, you can like infinitely snapshot off of like, I don't know, like people are just doing all kinds of weird things. So yeah, I don't know where Lexi's going to end up, but I do think she has the capacity because of her flexibility. I think that a good pilot could take her pretty far in Classic in the national season.
Awesome. Well, I think we've got a couple of those, and we'll be in the kitchen brewing up Lexi. So that's great. Thank you so much for leading us through these 2 decks here and explaining everything. I think we got some really great takeaways.
Yeah, Jacob, thanks for hosting today, and looking forward to the next one.
Next time. Thanks, guys.
Peace.